Alright everybody, so what we have here today is a Leica M2. I picked up a couple of these to do a refurb on, and the first thing I'm going to do here is remove this leatherette. So you can see, hopefully we got some autofocus here, but this leatherette's pretty damaged. This one didn't even have it on the back. But there's a few different ways you can kind of go about doing this, and I have a few tools right here that I'm going to use. So the tools I'm going to try to use today is I have this little mini scraper. I've got a few of these little kind of like scalpel tools and a case opening tool from this is from an electronics repair set. So we're going to try to use those and see what we can do here. There's a few different ways that you can go about doing this, and there are some videos where people use some paint stripper to remove this stuff, and some videos where you can, easily right here, we can just scrape this off. Sometimes, if you buy an old Leica that has really crappy leatherette, sometimes it's hard to remove. This one's pretty easy. It also really depends on on the environment. I'm actually going to remove the bottom plate here just so we can, don't have to worry about that. But sometimes it can be really easy like this. And I'm going to do two different cameras. The other one might be the same or it might not. But anyways, this little scalpel tool, we're extremely lucky in this case, mostly because the leatherette is super dry, and that'll happen too. I'm not terribly worried about any kind of leatherette getting in here where the shutter curtain is. This particular camera did not come with, it didn't come with a body cap, so I'm just having to kind of work around that. And I'm going to switch here to a very smaller, sometimes the leatherette's a little hard to get around this area right here, but hopefully, yeah, we can take it out in one chunk. This is also going out in one chunk here. Just gotta shake it off a little bit. This is kind of a tricky part right here, where we have this small little bit of leatherette between the self-timer button, and I may have to go in with, oh, there we go, we got it. Sometimes you may have to go in with a razor blade. That's what I was going to do, but luckily we didn't have to do that today. So I'm just going to remove this right here. You can have I should have got a brush, but I just don't really think about that sometimes. But you can have a brush to get this stuff off too. This leatherette's really easy to get off. It's going to make the recovering just so much easier. In hindsight, I probably would have tried to get a body clip or a body cap to put on this, but I did not have one. So we're gonna go here. Look how easy that is. I was really blessed with this camera, just because the leather is so dry. It might be a different story on this side, but we'll see. I'm gonna start from the bottom here. Oh, yep, there we go. It's it just chips off so easily like that. So that's gonna make removing this leftover adhesive so much easier. I have to come in with the blade here. This is just a small little paint blade that I got at Walmart. It was like $2, comes with 5 blades. Sometimes if this vulcanite leatherette is if it's going to be a little rough to get off, it's just easier to have a sharp edge like this to get it. And you don't really have to put a whole lot of force in it. Trust me, I've scratched up a bunch of these. This is not my first time doing this, so I've made every mistake you can imagine. And sometimes it can get a little tricky on the corners. That's why sometimes people want to use the clean strips or the paint stripper to remove it, because sometimes it can be a huge pain to get some of this off. We'll just try to go in and just kind of rock it back and forth and see what the situation is. There we go. Sometimes you might have to go in with a blade and just kind of wiggle it back and forth just to get kind of a good clean contact point, and then usually this stuff will just come off really easily. And this stuff will fly all over the place, just FYI. And it looks like this stuff on the side is going to be a little bit more complicated, so this is going to be probably more of a job to, there we go, more of a job for this little guy right here. I'm gonna go in right here and just see if I can't just kind of do it at an incline. I just want to see like how easily I can get this off. And it's looking like the blade is gonna be, the blade's just gonna make it a little easier here. I almost wish I could got an X-Acto knife that had like a smaller surface here, but I just wanted to see if this would work, because some of those blade sets have tons of precision blades and I never really use them. The only time I really use X-Actos in that situation is for jobs like these, but you know, I've done these infrequently. So here, this Leatherette's giving us just a little trouble, but we're getting there. And let's see, I think I can probably come in with one of these right now. Okay, let's see, there we go. Easy peasy. Let's see. Yeah, sometimes this Leatherette's just so dry that it'll crack off easily, and that's kind of the case here, which I'm happy. I'm also happy that this Leatherette is not on the back. That's just one less thing I have to do. I can focus on the rest of the camera. My main goal for this camera, I purchased this camera on the grounds that the shutter, it kind of works, but it kind of works, that's all I'll say. So the next process is going to be to take it apart and lubricate the slow gear, and then once we lubricate the slow gear, I think that's going to solve the problem, but we'll see. It might be a little more complicated than that. That's what I'm kind of expecting, but there's always hope. Now sometimes when you use the blade here, this stuff's going to go all over the place, so just kind of just prepare yourself for that. That's why I'm kind of covering it with my hands right here, because I don't want it all over the floor. But yeah, and right now it's just simply just a matter of going in with one tool, going with the other tool, and just seeing exactly like how attached this stuff is. So it's really just a matter of kind of going back and forth with these tools. These, again, I'll show you these tools real quick. This is just like an electronics repair kit I got offline. These are really easy to use. They have different widths and everything. So I like to use them for jobs like these especially. So it's looking like this Leatherette's going to be a little bit more of a problem to get off. So, and all it is really, I'm probably going to pause the video here in just a second, but all I'm really going to be doing is taking this blade and just kind of rocking back and forth to try to get this over. So we'll take a quick pause. I'm going to do the rest of this. You probably don't want to see the rest of it. Obviously this camera was super easy to get the Leatherette off of. We're not even really going to have to do a whole lot of adhesive removal. So we're going to pause real quick. I'm going to remove the rest of this, and then we'll get to the next step. Alright, so that took a little bit of time. So the main thing you can see here is that when I had to use this little scraper here, it took off some of the adhesive, which makes this job a little bit easier. So what we're going to do next is I'm just going to kind of lightly go through this. You can use sandpaper if you wish. I don't think I have any sandpaper handy at the moment. You don't need it, but it just this camera doesn't really need a whole lot of work. It was so easy to remove that Leatherette, as you can see. Here in the back became kind of an issue. I had to pretty much just scrape this whole part right here, and you can see right here I literally just had to like go like this, and it took a few minutes, but it's over with. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to, I have some Goo Gone that I'm going to use, but before I even do that, I'm just going to kind of lightly go through the body and just scrape off any kind of like excess stuff, any kind of like excess vulcanite that may have been just kind of hanging around. I'm gonna go here on the back. Actually, this is pretty much clean right here. Yeah, some of the problem areas that I had, I'm just gonna go through with this blade and just kind of like scrape some of this adhesive off. I think most of it's good. You also want to do a hand check and just go with your hands and then just check and see if there's any kind of loose stuff. Now, I will say this. This may be important to some of you, it may not be. But if you do use the scraper here, it's going to scrape the body just a little bit. And I don't know if you can see that right now. I'm going to try to use the reflection, but it might scrape the body up a little bit. I never really cared about it because I just use these as tools. Like I'm the type of photographer that I am. I use Leicas as tools. I use them a lot. I don't care if they kind of get banged up because I use them. So I'm not too worried about that. So what we're going to do now is I've got some Goo Gone and I've got this little orange microfiber cloth. And so what I'm going to do is I haven't really done this. I don't think I've used Goo Gone in the past. So this is kind of a new process for me as well. So we're going to see if it works. I don't know if it's going to 100% work, but you know, we're just going to go through the body and just kind of scrape it and see what happens. Now when you put the new Vulcanite on, it's good to have kind of a smooth surface for the adhesive to go on, and we'll talk about that here in a minute once we actually do put the Vulcanite on. Excuse me. Just kind of think of it like this. Think if you're going to paint something and before you paint it, you run some sandpaper on it, get it scratched up a little bit so the paint will stick to whatever you're painting. It's kind of the same way on this camera as well. We just want to kind of like make it as smooth as possible. You don't have to remove all the adhesive unless you really want to. I've seen lots of videos and I've seen lots of articles of people that all this adhesive right here, it's all completely gone. But I've only done that once, and it didn't really make a huge difference because the adhesive on the Leatherette that I use is very strong, and I've never had any kind of issues with it at all. So I'm not super picky when it comes to this Vulcanite, or this adhesive removal off of the body. You know, you just kind of want to get it. You just kind of want to get as much as possible. So you can see right here, this kind of dark brown adhesive right here, this is what you'll kind of want to get off. I'm just lightly going through with this razor blade here. And I just want to note that I still have the bottom plate off because it just makes it a lot easier, and then you don't have to worry about the blade scraping the bottom of the plate. But I'm just going through, and we're just going to do some light scrapes here just to get some of this excess stuff off. I'm not going to completely have this completely bare, but I'm just going to go through and just get off as much as I can, because it'll stick. The new Leatherette's not going to pop off at all. So I'm just kind of going through it. Everybody has their own kind of technique. I have mine, and this is what I've done. I think I've done this probably maybe about 10 times or something like that with the Leicas I've had over the years. But you know, if you want to buy a used Leica, most of the time the Vulcanite is just going to be cracked like this one. This camera was already missing Vulcanite, as you saw in the original video. And yeah, I mean, doing this is pretty easy. Sometimes it can be a little time consuming, and it does require a little bit of patience, and I know that's hard for me sometimes, but you know, you just need a little bit of patience and just do some repetitive motions over and over, and you're pretty much good. So we're going to take a quick pause. All I'm going to do is go over the rest of the body and remove some of this. I'm gonna chip a little bit more away with the blade, and all you can see that I'm doing is I'm just kind of I'm lightly putting pressure on the blade, and we're just going through in strokes like that. So I'm gonna continue to do this and remove as much as of the dark brown adhesive as I possibly can, and then we'll prep the body for the vulcanite installation. Alright, so obviously, you know, I didn't get everything off. Some of this old adhesive is so dry that it's not going to be an issue. I've done this many times before, so I'm not completely worried about it. Also, I also want to state the fact that this is a user body. This is not a museum piece, so it's not. If this camera were in more mint condition, I probably would make an effort to remove every little bit of adhesive. But out of all the ones I've done over the years, I've found that it hasn't really mattered too much. Again, you know, the most helpful tool is going to be this little scraper right here, and you know, you just want to get like as much as you can off, as much as you think you can. The adhesive on these new Leatherette is really good. I've never had any issues with it over the years. I've done a bunch of these, and this is just kind of like, I'm just kind of double checking a couple of things here real quick, trying to remove a couple of bits here. Also want to put an emphasis on, now if you do decide to use a little scraper like this, keep in mind, you know, like after you remove the Leatherette, just kind of go up here and just double check and see if there are not any little small bits of vulcanite stuck between the corner of the door here. Because when I went over it just a minute ago, there was a little bit stuck in there still. And so you just want to make sure to get it out. I've ran into some situations before where I forgot I forgot to check this, and we put it in. So this is the Leatherette that we're going to put on today. I just want to give a quick shout out to Morgan over at cameraleather.com. I have used his Leatherettes on all of my cameras that I've done. I've done lots of Leicas. I've done a handful of Rolleicords and Rolleiflexes. You know, it's just a quality product, great customer service, just a great resource, and just a good guy in general. And just want to give a shout out to Morgan at Camera Leather. So what we're going to do first here is we have our Leatherette, and then I have this Germex Advanced 70% alcohol sanitizer. Now, you'll want to make sure to get, this is the wet method of doing this, and I've found this to be the easiest way to do it. I've done the method where you just kind of stick the Leatherette on and hope for the best. That's just going to cause you a lot of pain and suffering if you decide to go that route. So the wet method is, we have this hand sanitizer, and just make sure it's 100% ethyl alcohol, because you don't want the vitamin E, or you don't want any kind of other additives in there. You just want this pure, straight hand sanitizer, and it's going to evaporate. So what we'll do is we'll get this ready, and usually what I like to do, I like to start first with easy stuff, and we're going to do the back door first. It's just the easiest one. It's only one piece. So I'm going to go through again real quick and just kind of make sure my surface is clean. Make sure there's not any kind of other stuff in there. So it's relatively dry. You don't have to be super nitpicky about it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a small drop of this hand sanitizer, and let's see, here we go. I'm going to take a small drop of this hand sanitizer, and I'm just going to liberally just kind of apply it right here on the back. This is going to evaporate, so don't worry about that at all. So now that we've got that in here, we can take this Leatherette and we'll just kind of set it right here. And since we have the hand sanitizer on there, that's going to give us a little bit of wiggle room to kind of move around here. And the back part is probably the easiest one, so I'm feeling pretty good about that one. So I will say that when you use this wet method, and it is the easiest way, because if you do it the dry method, you might put it in a weird way and it's just not going to give you much movability. So I just like to go in and just kind of tap on it a little bit. Now if you use this method, I would just kind of not use the camera for a day and just kind of give it time for the alcohol to evaporate. And then you might find some places where the leatherette pops up the next day, and then you'll just have to press it down. But this is looking pretty good to me, so I'm feeling really good about this one. It looks good. This camera, yeah, this camera needs just a little bit of TLC. So now, granted, this is going to be this next part's going to be a little bit more. You're just going to have to move some stuff around here, and we're going to go through that in just a sec. But what I like to do is I will just start from the top here and just coat the top of this body with the alcohol, and then we're just kind of move in from here. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm just going to, some of this alcohol is a little bit, you can get the gel kind, or you can get the kind that's a little bit more liquid based, and this kind is just a smidge bit more liquid based. So we're just kind of liberally go in there and just apply this stuff, and it's just going to give you extra time. So don't worry about hurting the camera at all. This is just going to make it so much easier. All right, so I feel pretty good about that. So we're going to take this leatherette that we have here, and the tricky part is this little hole right here. You want to be really careful right at this part. This hole right here where the self timer is, and also the frame selector. You just kind of have to go in and just kind of maneuver it like that. And this is where the alcohol comes into play really nicely, because it's going to give you a little bit more time to make sure that everything is exactly where it needs to be. And so what we're doing here is making sure every little part comes in. I'm going to get this little tool right here that we used before, just to kind of make sure that we're getting a nice fit in these kind of tight areas right here. And again, once it sets overnight, you'll have to go back through and just double check the small little bitty areas here, just to make sure that the leatherette is coming in just fine. So this looks good, and it's just, you just have to keep going. You just have to keep going on with it. And I get kind of obsessive at this point because I want to make sure everything is a good fit. So now that we've done that, what I'm going to do here is now that we have the front, I'm just going to kind of apply some of this rubbing alcohol on the sides. We'll start on this side, and I want to make sure that we have just enough there. And this is the easier part. It's just a matter of putting it together here. And also just be very careful right here at this part where we have the strap lug right here. I'll just want to kind of go in real quick. It's kind of a weird angle, so I'm doing it like from here. But when you go in, just make sure this little part gets pressed down too. And then, like tomorrow, when I double check this leatherette, I'm going to make sure everything's pressed down. And we're going to do the same thing for this side right here. I'm just going to get a little bit of this sanitizer and put it here on the body, and then it's going to kind of carefully go in and make sure everything's put together good on these little holes right here. So this makes it so much easier when you do it the wet method. And it's looking pretty good. Looks like a completely different camera now that we have the new leatherette on here. Let's see, I'm just going to kind of quickly double check some of these little small areas, but for the most part I feel really good about this. Everything looks pretty good. And also, before you finish up, you want to take the bottom plate and reinstall it, and just make sure that we have like a good fit as far as that goes. We just kind of want to go in and make sure, when we check here, everything's all set. And let's see, we're going to have some areas, just because it's wet, some of these areas are going to pop up, but once the alcohol dries, you'll be able to press it down and get like a really nice tight fit with all that. So here, right here for this, we're having a little bit of area where it's kind of popping up. I'm not terribly worried about it. It'll be fine tomorrow once the alcohol dries up. So that's pretty much it. So we went from removing the vulcanite, which was pretty easy for the most part. This is one of the easier jobs that I've done. Just on the side here earlier, it took a little bit of scraping, probably about maybe 10 minutes worth of scraping. And then just prepping the body for the installation of the leatherette here. So this is the product that we have, and it looks pretty good. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to set this aside for the rest of the day, and then tomorrow morning I'm going to come back and I'm going to make sure to press everything in and make sure everything's all right. And I'm feeling pretty good about it. It looks great. So again, I got this from, I'm not getting paid to promote this at all, but cameraleather.com, I've always used their leatherette coverings, and it's just a quality product, and I'm really happy with it. So that is all. So it's pretty easy job to replace the leatherettes. I think about half an hour or something like that. Could be a little longer, just depending. But in a nutshell, that's the way that I do it, and good luck.